So hello everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Krystal Anton, and I work, as Jim said, in the Center for Sustainability at Johnson County Community College. That is in Overland Park, Kansas, if you're not familiar. I've been running this multi-year bird collision study, and I'm just going to go over how we're conducting that study, what our results are so far, and then some ideas that you can use at home on your own windows or maybe at your office to prevent bird strikes there. And what you're looking at right now is a barred owl imprint from October 2019. This bird obviously hit the window very hard. We did not find the bird injured or deceased or predated, so hopefully it survived. So this study started because I kept finding dead birds on campus. So in 2015, I'd see the occasional dead bird. But in 2016, I started parking on the opposite side of campus. And then I would come in and I'd see 4 or 5 dead birds at the same location, right outside my office, actually. So in 2017, we started crowdsourcing data from the staff and the faculty. And they reported 82 dead birds. And that's just basically through the fall part of the year. And then we pulled some historical service ticket requests for dead bird removals back to 2012. We talked to grounds and maintenance about what they were finding. They all said it didn't happen very often and they'd find 1 or 2 a year, but we found out, as you'll see, that that can't possibly be true. And they told us, you know, little anecdotal stories about, we had a whole flock of cedar waxwings go down on one of our bridges once, and they found at least a dozen dead birds. So I realized, you know, this is a bigger issue than I even thought it was. We proposed a formal study and got that approved to start in 2018. And so what we did was we walked buildings and planned routes to go around 9 of the campus buildings. It's a total of 2.5 miles. During migration, I am able to get that walked every 24 hours, which is a really good coverage. And then outside of the migration period, we still walk it at least once or twice a week. As we were doing this the very first time, we would find like little piles of bird bones in the landscaping. Most of those were into what we refer as our bird funnels. And so if you look at this map, you can see where my mouse is pointing. Here is a bird funnel. This here is a bird funnel. This is a bird funnel. These are where the buildings are built in sort of a triangular shape. The birds fly into them. Even if they realize there's a window at the end, if they turn, they still run into a window. So those are some of our worst locations on campus. To plan an effective remediation, we wanted to know exactly where the birds were being found. So we numbered the windows, and my lovely interns got to do that. It took them like 2 weeks. We have a lot of windows on this campus. And then signs were hung up so that anybody who comes across a bird could easily report that. And the text number was the most popular, and those texts sometimes start at 6:30 in the morning during migration, sometimes earlier if it's grounds, and they go straight to my personal cell phone. So I'm on it all the time in May and fall migration. We standardized the photos when we found a bird with the tag and taking 3 pictures so that we could identify the birds. None of us are, you know, big bird experts. So in the first year, we didn't, every time we got a bird, we didn't know what it was. Now we're getting pretty good at it. And then we took context photos so we can look at the similarities between each strike if they're happening in the same location, especially. And so in this one, you can see the bird landed here, but it actually left feathers on the window up above here. So this is treated windows, but the bird didn't actually hit the treated windows. It hit that one single window up there. So that's important to know. In this case, we could say our remediation worked, but overall, we still had a failure. And so this is where all the birders come in and help us out. We upload everything to iNaturalist, and then our bird IDs are crowdsourced and confirmed there. And so you're welcome to look our study up, or KC Safe Birds KC. I can't even remember the name of it right now. And you can also help identify the birds that are put on there. Those are the 2 studies that are going on in around the Kansas City region right now. I also follow a Kansas birding Facebook group. And when those folks start posting species on there, I'm almost guaranteed to get one within a couple of weeks on campus. And then I know what it is because I already seen it by people who love birds and photograph them and post them on Facebook. Bird Safe KC, that's the name of the study that's going on as well on iNaturalist, and that's happening in downtown Kansas City. And if you are wondering what the #1 bird we see striking windows on campus is, it's the Swainson thrush. So we have picked up 88 dead Swainson thrushes on campus and a few injured ones and brought those into rehab. And then all of our bird carcasses are frozen and then they're sent to KU Center for Biodiversity. So it's the best end that could happen for a bird that died in a window strike. We have various situations on campus that create dangerous obstacles for birds. And as you can see here, we have glass that's transparent. And then also we have glass that's transparent and sticks up into the sky for some reason. And then we have reflections and bird funnels, like I showed you in that map. And then glass bridges that are at the same height as the treetops. So those all pose big issues for birds. And you can see right here, that's the reflection of this tree, but it looks like it's that tree. And it's very hard even as a human to see what's going on in that picture. So the results of the 2018 study, which is my baseline year, we picked up about 300 dead birds. Of the 42 birds that were downed, we were able to catch 20 of them. 17 of those did survive. We took them to Operation Wildlife in Linwood, Kansas. And we also recorded window imprints where the bird left a mark on the window, but we didn't find a carcass. Doves are kind of famous for that. They manage to hit a lot of windows and not die. And then the stairwell on the parking garage, which is here, all those orange dots, those are bird traps. And this one, for some reason, is the absolute worst one. So we have now a net and a whole system for like getting birds out of there. I'm still working on how to figure out how to keep them from going in the first place. It's complicated. And then we know that we estimate 25 to 30% of the birds, we never even got to record them. They either were fly-offs that we never saw, or, I mean, we watched red-tailed hawks come down in front of the buildings and take the birds before we got to them. And we also have feral cats that live on campus. And so we lost quite a bit of birds we expect to, you know, predators and other urban wildlife. So when we decided we would treat the windows, this is the best way I could think of to get a consensus on putting dots up. And this is an entryway where you can stand outside and then immediately walk through the door and look at it from the inside as well. Everyone preferred the etched glass look, which is the middle one, and it's kind of subtle, not as subtle as the black one. I don't think the black dots would have worked for us at all, so thankfully they fell out of popularity very quickly. As soon as everyone saw them from the inside, they hated the black dots. So the etched glass ones did win out. And we had a sign shop actually cut these custom for us, and they installed those. So on the glass bridges, we decided to do a decorative dot pattern. It is still a 2x2 spacing, but the dots are different sizes. So they go from 1/4 inch to like 1.5 inches or something around there. And because we had to make some decisions about coverage and costs and that type of thing, the vinyl was 48 inches, so I could get 46 inches of coverage. So I did leave a 12 to 18 inch gap at the top of the glass, and we have had birds hit that gap. So that lets us know that even that small of an open area of glass is still a danger to birds. I wouldn't do that again if I have to do it over, and it looks like I'm gonna get to do some more of it, so I'll be fixing that. This is where we're at currently. So after putting in window remediation, we continue to monitor its effectiveness, and that's been an important part of the ongoing study. And then we also have 2 new buildings, so we've included those in the study this last year. Neither one of them appears to be much of an issue now, but all the trees are really new and small in front of them, so we'll see what happens. Overall, for spring migration, we've had a 40% reduction in strikes, and that's over the entire campus, not just the windows that we treated. And in fall, we have about a 30% reduction on average. And next, I'm going to show you some case studies of specific locations on campus. Here in these slides, the years are color coded. So the white dots are my 2018 baseline year. Every dot on the window is a bird strike. The yellow is 2019 and the green is 2020. And then just remember, I only have half the data for 2020 because it's only through June. Often in this location, we can't tell if the birds are hitting the 2nd or 3rd story, but the trees reflect mostly in the 2nd story. So we believe that's the worst area. And then you can see by that first year, we got most of our strikes right in that one section of glass. Also, if the glass has a white outline around it, that is where we put the dots on the glass. So in this case, we only treated that section that was the worst out of the whole area. And what we found has happened is we've only had 1 strike there since we put the dots up, but now the birds are trying to avoid the dots and they're making that turn and they're hitting the glass that's on the other end. So you can see in year 1, there was only 1 bird that struck there, and now almost all the birds strike those windows on the left side. So we will be fixing that as well. Unintended consequences. I knew there would be some, but you never know what they are until they happen. So this is part of the plan for that location. And here you can see that the actual tree reflections is a little bit different angle, but it's the same as what we were just looking at. It is a really huge expanse of windows, so it would be expensive to put decals up. And because it's not a very public place, they're gonna let me put up paracord with magnets. They won't let me attach anything to the building. But I figured out that the window frames and the metal on the building is steel, so magnets will stick to it. It's going to be set out about 4 inches. Those ropes will be set out about 4 feet from the glass. So it should create like a visual double line because it'll cast a shadow onto the glass as well, and it'll close up that spacing a little bit. And then I'm still trying to decide what we're going to do on that left side. We'll probably end up with dots there as well. This is our Comm Dining. It's also on the north side of campus. North side of campus is sort of the worst part of campus. Window number 4, you can see in the first year, the birds were hitting that window the most. It lines up directly with that tree that you see. Once we put the dots up, and we did a 4x4 dot pattern there, 4-inch, and by 4x4 I mean spaced, not 4-inch dots. It's 1/4-inch dots spaced at 4 inches. And that got us a 64% reduction in bird strikes. But unfortunately, cutting down that tree during construction got us a 93% reduction in bird strikes. I still don't recommend it. And we'll see what happens now. They've planted new trees all along there that are too short to be in the windows right now. But in the future, I'd say in about 5 years, they'll be directly reflecting into those windows. At this time, we don't have any plans to change anything right there in that location. This is the GEB North Offices. It's also a bird funnel. It is the worst location on campus that we had. The treated portion of the windows, that's what's outlined in white. We have no strikes recorded there, but again, it appears as if while the birds are coming in, they're avoiding that area. They are going up and to the right. And so while we have no strikes on those, we've got only a 70% reduction on this whole face of the building because of those birds that keep going up to the right. And they're hitting that 3rd floor now that's in front of that tree. So that's going to be on our remediation list for August. And then this is from inside that office, just so you can kind of see what the dots look like. And these are 2x2 space dots, 1/4 inch out of etched vinyl. This is our science building. This is a south-facing building. Because of the weird size of the windows, we went with a 3x3 spaced dot to make it come out to look the same as the rest of them. And then we've had about an 80% reduction in this location. Once again, these windows are reflecting the treetops, and it's worked pretty well for us. So we don't have any plans to do anything else to this part of the building. Here's that piece of glass that just sticks up into the air. We actually have 2 of them. There's a south stairwell that has the same one. I gambled a little bit to save money. I put dots only on that top section of glass. And I personally witnessed 2 birds hit that. And then I found dead birds on the roof on the back side where they'd hit it and landed on the roof. So I realized that that was a big part of the problem, most likely. So just by treating with dots, that section alone, we've had a reduction of 70%. We still get birds that come through the garage on that 2nd floor and hit the inside of the glass or get trapped in there. It's not a lot of them, but at this point, we don't have any plans to do anything with this structure. And again, to save money, we treated the window that reflected the treetop. That's the 2nd floor. The birds were landing right in the middle in front of the door, so we just concentrated it there. We have had an 80% reduction in strikes here. We can kind of tell which floor they hit. Each one's kind of recessed, so we have had a couple of strikes each year after we put the dots on, but not as many as the original year, the baseline year. So we don't have further plans for this location. This is a whole lot of stuff going on, so I'll leave it here for a little bit. The numbers in yellow are the untreated windows, and the numbers in white are after we treated the windows. So that's why it changes from yellow to white on one side. We have 2 clear bridges, and what I decided is to put this heavier pattern on the glass and only do it on one side of the bridge. And on the clear bridges, that's worked out pretty well. The birds can see it from both directions, and so we've had a reduction in strikes on both sides. So for that first bridge, GEB Comm, it's been 100% reduction on the south side, the treated side, and 45% reduction in bird strikes on the side that's not treated. On that next one, the OCB LIB, on the treated side, we've had a 70% reduction. And on the untreated side, we've had a 60% reduction. And mostly we've had birds hit that empty stripe I left at the top. And then on the untreated side, the only reason we have bird strikes on it this year is because they washed the windows and then they put new glass in half of them. And immediately the next 2 days, birds hit them. And now no birds have hit them again because they're dirty. So dirty windows are a bonus. The 2 bridges in the middle, I also put those dots on one side, but you can see like they're not as see-through and they're more reflective. And so on the treated side, I have a 60% reduction on the CLB LIB. On the untreated side, there's been no change. And on the GEB SCI, science building, I have an 85% reduction on the treated side, but no change on the untreated side. And then the last 2 bridges are not treated at all, and there has been absolutely no change on those. So this next year, I am probably going to treat the back side of that GEB Comm bridge, and then the CLB LIB bridge, and the middle of that CLB Sci bridge, because all of the strikes there just line right up with that tree you see in the middle. So when I started doing the math on how many birds have died on this campus in 50 years, it's in the tens of thousands. And we all know birds are in trouble right now, climate change, the loss of habitat. This is something that you know, we can control here on campus and I can control at home is how many birds are dying on the windows. So we plan on continuing to monitor and treat the windows in a phase 2 this fall and a phase 3 next year after we monitor what we do in August. And low-rise buildings like we have on this campus are the worst offenders, as you can see by this graph. And then residences are the surprising second worst offenders. So I'm going to cover some different solutions for your homes as well. And I have a little blip here about downed birds. That is a kingfisher, and we did find that on our campus. It did survive. There's a video on OWL Facebook of them releasing it, so that was exciting. If a bird actually survives a window strike, but it's stunned, it's estimated 75% of those birds will die within 3 days. They are vulnerable to predators while they're recovering, and often they just don't recover enough. There's a lot of brain swelling and stuff that happens after birds hit windows. So if possible, you should get them to rehab if you can. And next best scenario would be to get them into a box or something dark and let them try to recover enough that they aren't vulnerable to predators anymore. When they're sitting on the ground and stuff, often they'll get eaten by feral cats and that kind of thing. So this is my hobby. I look for dead birds and I take pictures of random windows. So I pay attention to interior window treatments because they can do a lot to take care of some of this problem. And as you can see, the first 2 photos are actually on campus, and we have an untinted section of windows and a tinted section of windows on the exact same location. Like they reflect the same trees, the same lighting, everything. And you can see on the left, the tree is very muted. Having that white background, you know, pretty much tamps everything down. And then we have the mirrored one. And we find hummingbirds here all the time. And you can guess which side we find them on. We've never had a bird strike on the left side, and we have lots of bird strike, especially hummingbirds, on the right-hand side. Another place on campus, that middle picture is actually our library. I convinced them to let me take the tint out of the windows when they were remodeling. So my interns and I went over there and we scraped and pulled all the tint out of the windows. And then the contractor came back and put black shades in. So they kind of undid what we did. And you can see that shade comes halfway down. It is very mirrored on the top of that window, but below it, again, all the reflections are very tamped down. And then on the far right, that building is downtown Kansas City. We find birds there on the KC bird strike walks. And they are on the right-hand side where it's more reflective. Where those white blinds are, again, the reflections are really tamped down, and we don't generally find birds in front of white shades or blinds. So your solutions for home or your office, like spacing is super critical. And you can see by the numbers, like our 4x4 inch space dots are not as effective as our 2x2 inch space dots. We did put 2x2 inch dots, spaced dots, where we had hummingbirds that would hit the windows. And the people in the offices where that would happen say, now the hummingbirds fly up to the window and they look around and then they leave. So they're no longer hitting the windows. We haven't had any hummingbirds hit the 2x2 inch spaced dots. The 4x4, you know, is less effective. So I am not going to put 4x4 inch space dots on this campus anymore. We will be doing 2x2 inch space dots everywhere. Window decals with the right spacing. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can use, you know, painter's tape. You can use whatever you want to put on your windows, depending on how you want it to look. There are lots of options. The American Bird Conservancy has a really great webpage dedicated just to this and giving you solutions and ideas for what to do at home. Also, hanging things in front of the windows. Anything that breaks up the reflections or removes it or creates a barrier to the windows, that should work to help, you know, mitigate bird strikes. There's also really great, I'm getting some of these now, these window markers, because after looking into this, I want some. If you're creative, these window paint markers or window paints are really fun. They're semi-permanent. You can wash them off the window with window cleaner. They're waterproof, so they'll last through a migration season. You can change it up or you can leave them. If you have a commercial space, you can decorate the window for, you know, different holidays or sales or something that's going on. But this is a great way to take care of bird strikes on your glass. And then of course, there's all kinds of options for louvers and sunshades, window screens. I am in the process of replacing the window screens on my house, and they keep wanting to sell me the screen that's only on the bottom half. And so I'm gonna have to pay extra to get one with a screen that goes over the whole thing. But that's what I'm doing to help mitigate the strikes on my own home. And then if you don't have the option to do something from the outside, because, you know, maybe you're renting and you can't do something permanent, or you're in a second story apartment or a third story apartment or whatever, you can do stuff from the inside that will help. Creating a contrasting pattern or using light colors in the windows. You know, something's better than nothing. These zebra shades are kind of cool because even when they're closed, you can see through them. And then on the left-hand side there is, that's just Post-it notes. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can decorate your windows from the inside with, you know, just about anything, as long as it's sort of light colored and creates a contrast. And that is pretty much what I have right now. If anyone, I'll start answering some questions. And we will be sending out an email with a bunch of resources and links and that type of thing at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, so Krystal, I'm going to manage some of your questions here, but I want to let you take a deep breath, and I'll start with, yeah, go ahead and mute yourself for just a second, take a drink of water. I wanted to start with one person who had a correction for the record. I'll just read her comment. Jim said at the beginning that the Bird Safe KC project was started by Burroughs. That's not accurate. It was started and continues to be administered by the Missouri River Bird Observatory. Burroughs has been an awesome partner, as have you, Krystal. And so just a note of appreciation there for the work you've done, and then correcting the record on Missouri River Bird Observatory. So we have our questions here fall into a couple of different areas.
Krystal,
oh, I'm sorry.
Can I clarify something?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to insinuate that Burroughs started the program. They were just a partner with Missouri River Bird Observatory, and I see Dana's in the crowd, so she might want to add something to that, but I didn't mean to imply that Burroughs actually started it, because I think, and Dana can correct me, I think it's a nationwide type program and we're just a local. So there you go.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's start with Sami's first. Well, we've got a couple here that deal specifically both with architects and with landscape architecture. So have there been, Krystal, questions or I'm sorry, have there been or will there be conversations with the architectural firms that created the designs that we're having such problems with, especially those bird frontal issues, I would imagine?
So it is gaining a lot of traction in the architecture environment, and also there has been a lot of legislation lately to make windows bird safe. So New York passed some legislation that all new buildings have to have bird safe glass. And then suddenly, because that's a huge market, architects and glass manufacturers have taken note, and they are working on lots more solutions and that type of thing. And it has been written up in several of the architecture magazines. You know, there is some recognition of the Bucks Stadium, and I'm not a sports fan, so I can't remember who they play for. But the Bucks Stadium was done all bird safe on purpose, unlike the Minnesota Vikings Stadium. And I'm from Minnesota, so I'm especially disgusted by that. And also, nope, lost where I was going with that. Anyway, oh, American Bird Conservancy actually came to Kansas City in January, I believe it was, and gave, I think about 900 architects attended online a meeting about bird safe glass and night type of thing. So it is catching on. They are starting to pay attention. So hopefully in the future, all buildings will get built like that.
Cool. So let's do the question about landscape architecture as well.
Yeah. So as far as I know, nobody's sort of touched the idea that landscape architecture could make a difference. So one of the things we plan on doing is measuring both the distance, the height, and then how close sort of the treetops come to the buildings on the campus to see if there's a correlation we can come up with. It's kind of a long shot, but I'm going to do it anyway. But from my experience, there is definitely a distance at which the tree becomes more dangerous to birds in the reflections. And so that is an important thing, I think. Also because we did a bunch of construction on campus, and then we, of course, planted, there's one window on this one building. There's just one window in the middle, and they planted the tree right in front of it. It won't be an issue, you know, for 5 years, but in 5 years, it'll probably reflect right in that one window and we'll have an issue. So there is a role for landscape architecture to play for sure. Also, don't plant red things that reflect in windows, because we had tons of hummingbirds hit when we planted red flowers in front of these windows, and we've stopped doing that, and we've had no hummingbirds hit there since.
Krystal, it sounds like you're reading the chat, so I'll stop reading questions.
I'm not.
Oh, okay. So one of the early comments that we had was about squirrels, and they will attack a downed bird and eat it, which sounds like the stuff of nightmares. So thank you for that, Michael Rafferty. I appreciate it. But he did say that probably accounts for some of our missing carcasses as well.
Yes, we definitely have those.
So Beth asked specifically about why do window strikes increase after washing? And you did touch on that a little bit in your conversation about the deadly bridges that we have, but did you want to mention anything else there about what we've seen through the years? So
it just enhances the reflection, whereas when the window is dirty, and the dirtier the window is, the better. You know, the bird has a chance as it's coming up on there to start to see the marks on the window or the dirt or the drops from the rain that the dust left. And they have the ability to correct themselves. But if they never see that, they just never slow down. So the cleaner your window is, the less that they can perceive it.
Krystal, can you mention a little bit about bird strike legislation in Kansas or Missouri? Do you know of anything happening on that front for us?
And Dana may be better at this, but I don't know of anything in Kansas or Missouri that is happening. However, there is some sort of legislation that has gone through and been approved by the House. And it needs to be approved by the Senate. Is that how that works? But it is like, it's on the radar, and there are places that are starting to push that, both as cities, and then, like I said, there's some national legislation that's been moving around, and hopefully that'll get passed at some point.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, please, Jim.
Just on July 2nd, the House of Representatives did a bipartisan bill, passed a bird safe bill. It's called the Bird Safe Building Act. But like Krystal said, it's going to have to get through the Senate. And since we've got such a environmentally conscious administration who's fighting to Migratory Bird Act and the Endangered Species Act, who knows whether it'll pass the Senate, but it did get through the House of Representatives.
And that's federal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. Let's see. Can you speak a little bit to the stairwells here on campus, Krystal? Which species are the most likely to be trapped in those spaces?
Well, let's see. So early in the year, we usually get 1 or 2 like brown creepers. And then when we get it just before migration, we start getting a lot of house finches stuck in there because they're looking for nesting sites. House sparrows, on the other hand, use the stairwells like apartment houses and have no issues going in and out of there. We get a lot of juvenile robins in there. What else? We had a flycatcher in there this year, and then in the one stairwell, we were getting hummingbirds in there, and they're almost impossible to get out. They, a lot of them would end up dying way up. They go way up high, and they just can't figure out how to get out. And it gets really hot up there. So a lot of them were dying up there. We have since put a banner in the big opening on the worst stairwell. So birds can't see into it anymore. And it has really cut down on the number of birds that we get in there. We haven't had any hummingbirds in there, one, since we've done that.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about decals and lighting for nocturnal migrants. Have there been any conversations here on campus about our lighting practices and how that plays out for our nocturnal migrant birds?
That conversation happens in the Center for Sustainability because we aren't particularly happy with it. It's sort of my next thing to tackle. We are currently in the process of changing all the lights out to LED on the exterior of the campus. I have been told that they should shine more downward than the lights that we currently have. We will see if that happens. On our new buildings, all the lighting that went up is the type that helps keep light pollution down, however. So, you know, we have done some stuff. It's the lighting that existed before that we need to work on. But it's definitely on our radar. So we will tackle that at some point.
Cool. Anne has asked, are there materials for large window spans? And she explains, our Strawberry Hill campus for the Kansas Health System has a big problem, and I'm having trouble getting the ear of our administrators to do something. Krystal's really good at that. So I'll let you weigh in on the rest of it. I just wanted to pat you on the back there.
I mean, you can do any expansive windows. It just depends on how much money you have available. So that's part of the reason that we're doing that one section on our campus with the paracord is because, you know, we're looking between $8,500 and $450. That's not with installation, but still much less expensive. And if you look that system up on Acopian Bird Savers, they've done like great big commercial buildings with that paracord. It doesn't look bad and it seems to work. So that would be my recommendation, unless, you know, you want to do something fancier, and then decals are probably your next best bet.
Anne mentions that the windows are really high up. It's the old FBI building.
Oh yeah, that is a tall building. It can be done. It can be done from the roof. So there's a solution for everything. If you wanna get a hold of me, I'll help you figure it out.
So Joyce asks if there's an ordinance in Johnson County that addresses the problems of feral cats. And if there aren't, are there any solutions that you know of that could be put into place to help with that problem here?
Oh man. So I follow the lost and found like animal things for all over Johnson County and Kansas City. My understanding is that it's pretty much a free for all on cats. Like they won't come pick them up. It's pretty much up to individuals to take care of cats, like to turn them in, you know, for get them spayed or neutered. There's a trap and release program. I think it's in Missouri, however. So feral cats are a really tough one. We get them on campus quite a bit. I live trap them. We get them spayed. So far, they're all females. We have raised kittens. You know, I don't know if there's any good answers for feral cats at the moment. And there's no rules. I don't think there's any rules. Or if there are, they aren't being enforced.
I have a couple of questions about decals and time of day. So let's do decals first. Do decals of predator birds on windows help deter birds from flying into them?
Yes, if they're spaced every 2 inches.
So small predators.
No, I mean, putting that one single decal or 5 across a window or something, that is not going to work. They're not going to register that the way that we would hope they would. So breaking up the reflection every 2 inches, 4 inches, that's going to be the most effective thing you can do. So yes, those decals will work. You have to space them every 2 to 4 inches. So that's a lot of bird decals on your window.
And then, unless I've missed a question, and if I have, please don't hesitate to remind me. In the Q&A box, I take direct correction very well. Time of day, Krystal, do you monitor what time of day is the most likely to cause bird strikes?
So it's a tough one. We walk generally in the mornings before 10 a.m. on campus, and we will find a lot of birds. And then all day long, people will turn in birds during migration. So yeah, it's a tough one. I would say mostly in the mornings, sort of after the birds have landed and they're trying to feed. But we do get birds all day long. We do record the time that we have the report or pick them up. I haven't really done much with that data yet. There are certain buildings where in the fall, the angle of the sun completely affects when the birds hit. And so come September, on one building on the east side of campus, I will get a report between 5 and 5:30, and I will get one every day. Because something about the reflection on the glass between 5 and 5:30, that's when birds are going to hit it. So there is definitely some correlation there, but I don't have data on it.
Chris mentions 2 things here. The ASPCA spays and neuters and releases cats that aren't adopted. They literally kill billions of birds globally annually. And then to the point of nocturnal migrants, Chris mentions that swains and thrushes, which are most commonly killed, are nocturnal migrants.
Yes, they are.
I'm going to give you, I have a question I'd like to hear you answer, even though I've heard you answer it before. And that'll be, I'll give y'all a chance to put some additional questions in if you have any. But Krystal, you've mentioned a lot about the different student groups and volunteers that have helped you out. Can you talk a little bit about how you initially trained the folks who've done a lot of this citizen science work with us?
Yeah. So one of the things we did to help practice looking for birds, because you sort of get searcher bias. I have it for sure. And when you're really used to looking for birds in one place and one lands just to the left of that, you don't see it. So some of the things that we've done is we took photographs of birds that we found on campus, and we had them printed on fabric, and we made like decoys out of them. And then I would go place them out on the search routes and then see if the searchers came back with them. So that's one of the ways that we sort of tested them and kept them on their toes to be looking for birds in all the different locations. And then just, you know, getting people accustomed to looking at those, counting out windows left to right, looking at those decals on the windows and that type of thing, using your camera, your phone camera in the right direction, and handling live birds is probably the most intimidating thing that most of our volunteers do if they haven't done it before. And if I'm not on campus, I get lots of texts about it to get it right. But for the most part, you know, it's been student interns and then volunteers from all different departments on campus, both staff, faculty, and students. So I've had nursing students and that type of thing going out and picking up dead birds. So it's been a really great sort of connector to lots of different departments on campus.
Have we talked anything about the location of bird feeders? How that contributes to the problem of window strikes?
Yeah, I don't know. we don't have any on campus. I mean, we do, but nobody puts any bird seed in them anymore. So I really don't know.
And Dana can back me up on this. I think it's just a matter of, you know, Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks attacking, and if they're close enough to the windows, I think it makes it possible for them to fly up against the window when they're in their escape route. So.
And Jim, thank you for that. Heidi mentioned that feeders should be 3 feet from the windows or closer. That way, even though they'll still strike, it'll be with lower velocity. And then Jim, you also mentioned that Dana may want to discuss volunteer opportunities with Bird Strike KC. And Dana, I can allow you to talk, but I don't want to shock you by turning on your microphone without giving you fair warning. So I will allow you to talk, and you can unmute yourself at your leisure if you'd like to mention anything about volunteer opportunities. You should be able to do, there you go. Good job.
Oh, wow. I was not prepared for that. I appreciate it, but I also don't want to hijack this excellent presentation. No,
Well,
in the middle.
Dana, your audio is kind of garbled. I'm going to interrupt you.
Go towards the internet.
Yeah. Try again, hon.
I want to express enormous appreciation for Krystal, who's so knowledgeable. I hope that folks can hear that.
Yes, you're good now.
Okay. Oh, excellent. All right. So she is the most knowledgeable person that I know in our region about this topic, and so her presentations are always excellent. I actually received an email from someone already this evening. Folks can just go to birdsafekc.org, and we will be starting surveys again for folks that want to volunteer, probably mid-August or so. All the training will be virtual this time, of course, and we definitely want everybody to be safe out there. And that's it. I think that's all I have. Back to Krystal.
I have one other question here. Can you speak to how we've worked with JCCC admin and maybe advise on the challenges someone might face in talking to their building owner? I want to add one bit to that before I let Krystal finish it, and that's that so much of the work that we are able to do here at JCCC happens because we have the backing of an outstanding group of student leaders on our student sustainability committee. And you know, as with any higher ed institution, it really helps when that push or that initial ask comes from students backed with some agency and some power and control, and then with the support of staff here in the center and Krystal's expertise for sure. But that is really started with that student voice. And Krystal, if you wanted to mention some of the challenges that we've faced with administration that folks could take with them to have these conversations with their own building owners?
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest one really was the aesthetics. And so that's why I put up the samples in a location where they could kind of see it from the inside and the outside. And there were people worried about the dot spacing and everything else. So I put the smallest spacing, the 2x2 spacing, as the sample. And I have to say, I mean, we had large groups of people stand on the outside and go on the inside, and stand on the outside and go on the inside. And after they saw it in that light, I don't think anybody thought it was a bad idea.
No, and we had everyone from presidents to trustees to faculty, staff, and students. We had a lot of people sort of experience that space.
Yeah, and the other thing that a lot of people were concerned about, especially like some of the individual offices that got dots on their windows, as opposed to the office suites where it's a whole group of people, is, they were worried about losing their view, which is why I showed you some of the slides from the inside of the offices, because it doesn't break up your view at all. As a matter of fact, your eyes adjust to it so quickly that you don't see it after a while. And we actually had somebody who didn't notice it for 2 days, and she works facing the window and had to be told that it was done by someone who walked in her office and said, "Oh, you have dots on your window." And she was like, "I do." So, I those are the two biggest things that we had to overcome. Of course, when you're dealing with, I had the support of students financially as well. So when you're dealing with private business owners and stuff, cost is going to be an issue, I'm sure of it. So coming up with different solutions, and they don't all have to look like this. It could be advertising on the windows. It could be decorative. I have a whole thing on commercial building ideas too. So don't sort of pigeonhole it to one thing. Get it lots of ideas on the table, because if there's one that they can see a benefit from besides birds, they may be more apt to do something. And then just showing them lots of pictures of dead birds. I mean, I have actual little stuffed ones that I can bring and, throw down on the table. It makes an impact, but lots of pictures of dead birds and data. I guess that's my other thing. Good data, that sells.
You had one last comment. Anne said that this was a really excellent presentation and study and is so important. And thank you for your time. And with that, Jim, I think we have cleared out our Q&A. I'll turn things back over to you. And Jim, there you go.
I have nothing else to say. But thanks for everybody for attending, and especially thanks to Krystal and Christy for hosting this.
We were glad to.
Yeah, we were happy to. And if you have more questions, feel free to email me. And like I said, we'll be sending out a sheet that has links and that type of thing for the different bird studies, and then for treatments for your windows. And I think there's one in there for the legislation too, because you sent me that one, Jim.
Right, yep.
So lots of things to look at, and I'm happy everybody came to listen.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank
Night.
you.
Thanks.